Welcome to Quicksand, the most important news in pharma and biotech this week. The FDA's Center for Drug Evaluation and Research announced the details of a major reorganization affecting nearly one-third of CDER. The proposed reorganization will impact the Office of New Drugs, Office of Compliance, Office of Executive Programs, and Office of Communications, and has been submitted to the Department of Health and Human Services, though still must be approved and then submitted to Congress for concurrence. The changes include the creation of a new Office of Therapeutic Biologics and Biosimilars within the Office of New Drugs, which will house policy staff and scientific review staff. The restructuring will help in implementing the reauthorized Biosimilar User Fee Act. The Office of Unapproved Drugs and Labeling Compliance will house the Division of Compounded Drugs, formerly known as the Division of Prescription Drugs. In addition, the Office of Manufacturing Quality will establish a third drug quality division with two branches for global compliance. And the Office of Drug Security, Integrity, and Response will rename its Division of Imports, Exports, and Recalls to the Division of Global Drug Distribution and Policy to reflect the agency's responsibility in ensuring the safety and quality of drug products flowing into and out of the U.S. The Office of Executive Programs is restructuring to address the growing volume and complexity of managing CDER's executive programs. The changes will establish 4 staff groups within the immediate office, focusing on specialty projects, executive secretariat matters, legislative activities, and program management and analysis, absorbing the functions of the former Division of Executive Operations. Office of Communications changes include establishing 3 branches within the existing Division of Drug Information. It will also rename 2 divisions to better reflect their expanded mission. The Division of Health Communications will now become the Division of Public Education and Outreach, and the Division of Online Communications will become the Division of Digital and Online Communication. The FDA adopted an addendum to the International Council for Harmonization's guidance aimed at supporting drug sponsors in the collection of data from multi-regional clinical trials. The guidelines in E17, General Principles for Planning and Design of Multi-Regional Clinical Trials, detail 7 basic principles to follow when designing multi-regional clinical trials. Identified principles include pre-specified pooling of regions or subpopulations, a structured exploration to examine the consistency of treatment effects across regions and subpopulations, and efficient communication among sponsors and regulatory authorities. Another basic principle points to FDA's adopted version of ICH's E6R2, Good Clinical Practice, integrated addendum to E6R1, which was released in February, in the event of different regional practices, such as to ensure the quality and interpretability of multi-regional clinical trials study results. It is important for such data to be accepted by regulatory authorities across regions and countries as the primary source of evidence to support marketing approval of drugs, the 24-page ICH guidance states. The guidance also provides recommendations to address issues related to the planning and design of multi-regional clinical trials, including those associated with choice of endpoints and comparators. The FDA issued draft guidance providing the agency's current thinking on the requirements for submitting field alert reports by applicants of new drug applications and abbreviated new drug applications. Specifically, an NDA or ANDA applicant must submit a field alert report to FDA within 3 working days of receiving the following kinds of information for distributed drug products: information concerning any incident that causes the drug or its labeling to be mistaken for or applied to another article, and information concerning any bacteriological contamination or any significant chemical, physical, or other change or deterioration in the distributed drug product, or any failure of one or more distributed batches of the drug product to meet the specification established for it in the application. As part of its push to move away from manual data entry to a more automated system of receiving field alert reports, FDA conducted a pilot project that concluded in June, and a new version of the automated form, which incorporates feedback from pilot project participants, was approved by the Office of Management and Budget. The form is available on FDA's Field Alert Reports website And though the Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research did not participate in the pilot program, applicants holding NDAs or ANDAs regulated by CDER may also use the new form. British politicians have voted for the United Kingdom to try to remain close to the European Medicines Agency after Brexit. They voted for a text tasked the government with seeking to secure the right for the UK to fully participate in the regional regulatory network after it leaves the European Union. Over the past year, the UK government has repeatedly said it wants to retain close ties to the EMA, culminating in the publication of a white paper that envisions it remaining an active participant in the agency. In this vision, EMA approvals would continue to give drug developers access to the UK market. While that makes the UK's desired position fairly clear, opposition politicians want to further tie the government to a pro-EMA negotiating strategy. To do so, politicians drafted a legislative amendment that stated the government must take all necessary steps to strike a trade deal that allows the UK to fully participate in the European regulatory network. The amendment passed by 305 votes to 301, reflecting the belief among many politicians that it is in the UK's interests to stay closely tied to the EMA. However, while the vote pushes the government to try and retain close ties to the EMA, it is unclear whether the relationship sought by the politicians is possible. The government has detailed its desire to remain part of the European regulatory network in increasingly clear terms over the past year, but EU negotiators have consistently downplayed the prospect of the UK staying closely involved. The European Medicines Agency has finalized its guideline on gene therapies more than 4 years after writing the original draft. Progress on the guideline slowed after almost 30 organizations responded to a 2015 call for feedback. EMA has now worked through the feedback, resulting in the finalization of the guideline. Like the 2015 draft, the final guideline discusses the quality, preclinical, and clinical aspects of developing and manufacturing gene therapies. The titles of each section and subsection are nearly identical to those used in the draft. The changes are limited to the addition of a glossary and modifications of the text in each section. Many of EMA's modifications are minor changes, such as revisions to the wording and additions of references to other texts. That reflects the nature of most of the feedback EMA received from the industry, although some respondents did use the consultation to push for more significant changes. The Biotechnology Innovation Organization wrote in its feedback that the guideline is not harmonized with other regions and recommended that established regulatory authorities align on guidance as much as possible to facilitate global development programs. EMA knocked back the call for harmonization, noting that global initiatives focused on the modality are yet to start. Given the EU and the United States have very different legal and regulatory frameworks for gene therapies, EMA thinks it is impossible to harmonize requirements through guidelines. Thank you for listening to Quicksand, episode 39, July 23rd, 2018.